Welcome to the 2020 Top 10 Ground Forces in the World. Some quick rules. Army and Marine forces only. No paramilitary forces will be counted. The level of training experience is factored in. These are just my thoughts. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Remember, no equipment in deep storage is also counted. So let's begin. Coming in at number 10 is North Korea. They have a total of about 13 core headquarters, which amounts to about 72 brigades, of which 21 are armored, 9 are mech infantry. They have a whopping 248 infantry brigades. They have 5 airborne brigades and 2 amphibious or marine brigades for a total of 285 maneuver brigades. They have about 70 field artillery brigades and 9 engineering brigades. The total manpower is 1.1 million active soldiers, of which they have 600,000 reserves, for a total of 1.7 million soldiers. Now, their armored force, not too well. They have 500 poor tanks, mostly T-72s and different variants. They're called by different names. They've got 3,560 what I consider hopeless tanks, T-55s, T-34s from World War II, PT-76 for a total of 4,000 some tanks. Now, they have about 32 infantry fighting vehicles. They only have about 2,500 armored personnel carriers, not a very mechanized force. Now, their strength, they have 500 self-propelled artillery, 8,000 mostly old towed artillery, 5,000 old multiple launch systems, 24 surface-to-surface missile launchers for a total of 13,000 indirect fire systems. They've got 11,000 anti-air defense guns. Now, in regards to their equipment, they have the best equipped army in the world if this was early 1960s, late 1950s. Most of their field artillery and ADA, even though there's a lot of it, they use a lot of different platforms, which means it takes a lot of different ammo, which means they don't have enough, which means it takes a lot of supports. This force itself is not well trained. Coming in at number 9, Egypt. They've got one of the largest militaries in the Middle East. It consists of 21 armored brigades, 24 mech infantry brigades, 5 infantry brigades, 2 air mobile brigades, and 1 airborne brigade for a total of 48 maneuver brigades. They have 28 field artillery, 2 surface-to-surface brigades, 6 engineer brigades. Now, their armored force itself, they have about 1,100 modern tanks, M1A1s. They have 850 capable tanks, M60A3s. They have about 500 poor tanks, M60A1s and T62s, for a total of almost 2,500 total tanks. They also have 750 some infantry fighting vehicles, another 4,700 armored personnel carriers, for a total of 5,400 armored vehicles total. Their field artillery, they have a total of almost 2,000 indirect fire systems, which consists of almost 500 self-propelled, almost 1,000 towed artillery, about 450 multiple launch systems, and 40 some surface-to-surface systems. They have a nice size anti-defense air artillery coming in at about 300, both guns and SAMs. They have 57 some attack copters. Now, the total active army itself consists of about 300 active duty soldiers. Now, they do have a nice size reserve of 375 soldiers, but the training is lacking. And that's a big plus all the way around with the Egyptian force. That's why they ranked only number 9. So let's move to number 8. Number 8, another Middle Eastern country, Turkey. Now, Turkey has 4 army headquarters, 9 corps, 4 division headquarters. They actually have the largest ground force next to the United States in NATO. But for this ranking, we won't be ranking them with NATO because of lately political issues. They have 11 armored brigades, 19 mech infantry brigades, 10 infantry brigades, 1 marine/amphibious brigade, for a total of 41 brigades. Now, They have, like I said, the largest ground force in NATO next to the United States at 263,000 active soldiers and another 257,000. They've done extensive joint training with different members of NATO, and it's been exhibited in their current skirmishes with the Syrian and Russian forces in Syria. This is a well-trained force that knows how to use combined arms. They have 316 modern tanks, Leo 2s. They have slightly over 1,000 cable tanks, Leo 1s, M60A3s. They still have some poor tanks. They may look at retiring M60s and M48A5s, which they've upgraded, but they're still poor tanks for a total of almost 3,400 tanks. Now, they have a nice size armored fleet, almost 5,500, which consists of about 1,100 infantry fighting vehicles, 4,300 armored personnel carriers. They also have almost 2,000 total indirect fire systems, which consist of a little over 1,000 self-propelled field artillery, 760 towed artillery, and about almost 150 multiple rocket launch systems. Next up is Israel. They have 3 corps, 11 total division headquarters for active duty and reserves. They have a total of 24 heavy brigades, 12 and 12, 12 armored, 12 mechanized infantry, 16 infantry brigades, 5 airborne brigades, for a total of 45 maneuver brigades. They probably have one of the most advanced forces in the Middle East and one of the best trained. They also have a great combat logistical support with 8 field artillery, 1 military intelligence, 1 signal, 6 logistic brigades. Now, their total forces, they have about 126 active ground forces with another 400,000 reserves. Now, they pride themselves on being able to call up their reserve forces and them being well trained in a short amount of time. Their actual combat forces are 510 advanced tanks, Merkava 4 is one of the best tanks in the world, 730 modern tanks, Merkava 3, 370 capable tanks, and Merkava 2 for a total of 1,600 total tanks. They also have 1,300 armored personnel vehicles. All these have been modified by Israel itself. They have a total of almost slightly over 1,100 indirect fire systems made up of 540 self-propelled artillery, 340 some towed artillery, and 240 multiple launch rocket systems. Now, they do have 43 attack copters and 93 transportation copters. Coming in at number 6, the Republic of Korea. This force has come a long way. They have 3 army headquarters, 9 corps, for a total of 48 divisions, of which 23 are heavy maneuver brigades, 11 armored, 12 mech infantry. They have 122 infantry, which includes the active and reserve. They have 1 air assault brigade, and they have 7 marine brigades for a total of 153. They have extensive defensive systems built throughout their country in case of North Korean invasion. They have a total of 22 field artillery brigades, 1 ADA, and 1 combat air brigade. They have an extensive enabler brigades with 11 engineers, 1 Seaburn, 8 signal, and 12 logistics. Their active army is a great size at 590. They still have issues because conscription, and each soldier only lasts 2 years before they leave, so it's a high turnover rate. They're able to draw upon 2.4 million reserve soldiers in case of war with the North, which brings their total force to almost 3 million ground forces. They do have their new tank, the K2. They have about 100 of them. They're advanced. They have 534 modern K1 A1s. They have almost 1,100 capable tanks, mostly K1s with limited T80s, about 80 of them. They still have 596 poor. They're modified M48A5s, and for some reason they still have slightly more than 300 hopeless tanks, M40s, for a total of 2,600 tanks. But overall, a great armored fighting force. Now they have a lot of infantry fighting vehicles, the exact opposite of North Korea. They have about 2,200 infantry fighting vehicles, another 860 armored personal carriers, about 1,100 armored vehicles. Overall, they have a great blend of armored vehicles and tanks. Now when it comes to indirect systems, though not as large as North Korea's, it's actually more potent. They have almost 5,100 indirect systems. They have radar and coordinations and training with the U.S. Army has made this a very proficient force. They have about 1,300 self-propelled field artillery, another 3,500 towed artillery, 214 multiple launch systems, and 30 surface-to-surface missile launchers. They have 96 mostly Apache attack copters and 213 transportation helicopters. They have a nice size 340 ADA guns, mostly SAMs and guns itself. Next up, number 5 is India. They have a total soldiers of over almost 2.2 million, of which 1.2 million are active soldiers and another 960 are reserve soldiers. They have even more paramilitary, but like I said earlier, we won't get into that. That force is made up of 14 corps and 37 divisions. They have a total of 37 heavy brigades, 20 armored, 17 mech infantry. They have a huge infantry, light infantry, that is, 93 infantry brigades, 1 airborne brigade, 1 marine brigade, for a total of 132 maneuver brigades. They have 48 field artillery brigades, 8 engineering, 1 signal. Now their tank force, nice modern force. They've really upgraded this through joint efforts with Russia. They have they have 1,100 modern tanks with their homegrown Urgent, I always say it wrong, and T-90s. They also have another 2,400 capable tanks, mostly T-72s, for a total of almost 3,600 tanks. It's a great armored force. They have 3,100 infantry fighting vehicles and another 300 plus armored personal carriers. Now, they only have 3,200 indirect fire systems. They really need to upgrade their self-propelled artillery to keep up with their armored formations. They have 297 towed artillery, another 214 multiple launch systems, and 15 surface-to-surface systems. Now they have a huge ADA system with over 3,000, and they have 19 attack copters. Next up, number 4, Russia. They have a total ground forces of 1,100 soldiers. Now people look at, whoa, you've only got them down to having 800 reserves. Everywhere else says 2 million. That 2 million is for the entire military. And the reserve forces they have are from anybody who served for a year all the way up to like 50. So it's dubious on the size of their reserves. Their active duty ground forces, to count the Marines, their airborne corps, and their army, amounts to 360 soldiers. They're steadily trying to improve this to make it an all-volunteer force and increase pay and morale, but they still have issues with corruption, lack of pay, and other issues. Their overall army itself consists of 12 armies headquarters, 4 corps headquarters, 12 divisions. They've been steadily increasing the size of the total numbers of their divisions, of which 67 are heavy brigades, 11 armored brigades, 56 motorized infantry brigades or mech brigades. They have 2 machine gun infantry brigades. They have 1 recon scout brigade. They have 7 marine / naval infantry, or amphibious as you want to call it. 7. They have the largest airborne corps in the world with 7 airborne corps, 5 air assault, for a total of 89 maneuver brigades. They've got 24 field artillery brigades, 22 ADA brigades, 12 surface-to-surface brigades, the largest in the world, for a total of 58 combat support brigades. Now, their weakness is their enabler brigades. For all this combat power, they only have 10 logistic brigades, 4 engineer brigades, 1 NP brigade, 15 seaborne brigades or MBC, 10 transportation, which are rail units to move from east to west and west to east, for a total of 40 brigades. Now, looking at their equipment, they've got a total of 3,100 tanks. I do not count their tanks in deep storage because they're not really well maintained, and it would take months and months to get them up, and a ton of people working on them. But they do have 1,800 modern tanks. It's mostly T-72Bs, T-72B3Ms. Those are their mainstay of their force going forward. The T-72B3M being their most advanced tank. They do have T-90s, but they'll slowly be fading those out eventually. They have 1,300 capable tanks, mostly made up of, again, T-72s. They do have some T-80s, which they're already in the process of fading out. Overall, it's a capable force. They still use too many different platforms. They have now, their strength would be their armored vehicles. They have 7,200 infantry fighting vehicles, 7,600 infantry fighting vehicles, and almost 7,300 armored personal carriers, for a total of almost 15,000 total vehicles. It's the backbone of their ground forces. Now they have a total of 3,200 indirect fire systems. And you go, whoa, they got 24 field artillery brigades, and they have all this, but they still only have 3,200 field artillery. Something's not adding up, of which 1,700 are self-propelled, 400 are towed, 960 are multiple launch systems, 156 are surface-to-surface. Now they do have a huge, once again, number of artillery in deep storage, but the equipment is not being maintained. They have 31 ADA, mostly SAM and guns for air defense. They have a huge a helicopter fleet of 375, the second largest, well, second best in the world. They have about 600 transportation helicopters. Now, on the list at number 3, the People's Republic of China. Some people will say this is too low, but I have a surprise for you. Now, they have 13 army, they call them army groups, I call them armies themselves because of their size, of which 65 are heavy, 35 armored, 30 mech infantry. They have a whopping, when you count their reserves, 91 infantry, but these are mostly for defensive capabilities for the infantry. They have 6 airborne, 2 air assault, and they're greatly increasing the size and capabilities of their 11 Marine/amphibious brigades, for a total of 175 total maneuver brigades. They've got 31 field artillery. They've got just a huge, huge number of air defense artillery brigades at 73. This is counting all of them. The ones they have in reserves, the ones in their army, the ones in their navy, and the ones in their air force. They have 13 air combat brigades, for a total of 117 enabler brigades. Now, combat support brigades. Now they have 24 logistic brigades, which is good because they're actually trying to use this so they can increase their force protection for their ground forces. 27 engineers, another 17 NBC/Seaburns, 1 aviation, 10 signals, 1 transportation, for a total of 70 enabler brigades. Now, in the last couple of years, the Chinese have been slowly shrinking the size of their ground forces to increase the size of their air force and navy and their rocket force. Now, at the same time, they've been increasing the quality of those smaller forces. And when I say smaller, it's a total of 1.3 million, so it's still not small, of which slightly over 1 million are active and another 310 in reserve. They also spun off the police force, which greatly reduced the size of their ground forces. They have a modern force of 850 modern ZT-99 and ZT-99As. They have 260 capable tanks, ZT-Z96s and As, and their new ZT-Q 15, which is a light tank, but it's very modern. They have 500 bore tanks made up of ZTZ-88, ZTZ-79s. But their biggest Achilles heel is they still have 2,300 hopeless tanks, which is ZT-59s, ZTD-05, ZTQ-62, ZTS-63s. These are mostly knockoff T-55-54s and PT-76s and other light tanks for a total of 6,323 tanks. They've got a great size armored vehicle fleet with over 6,300 infantry fighting vehicles and almost 4,000 armored personnel carriers for a total of 10,270 vehicles. Now they also have a decent, well, huge size total indirect fire systems with 5,000, of which 2,100, almost 2,200 are self-propelled artillery, another almost 1,300 towed artillery, 1,600 multiple rocket launch systems. Now they have they're greatly increased their capabilities with their attack and scout copters. A lot of their attack copters look familiar. They have 314 transportation copters. They really need to improve that. Now they have 78, almost 7,900 ADAs, both guns and SAMs. Now next, number 2, you wouldn't have guessed it, NATO. Now this NATO does not count the United States or Turkey. It counts all the rest of the members. Now some people say, oh, they only spend less than 2%. Well, that 2% is pretty huge, pretty modern. Not only have they been doing joint training with each other, they have joint command and control. They use joint munitions. They use a lot of the same equipment. They've made reforms to where most of the forces have to be active duty volunteers, with very few conscriptions, war planning together. Now they have a total of 8 corps headquarters, 1 logistical corps headquarters for a total of 25 divisions. Of that, 84 are heavy brigades, 17 armored, 67 mechanized infantry. They have another another 47 infantry brigades, a total of 13 air, which consists of 6 airborne, 7 air assault or air mobile brigades. Then they have another 7 marines or amphibious brigades. And they have the world's largest, or one of the world's largest recon assets with 10 recon/scout brigades for a total of 150 maneuver brigades. These guys are highly trained. Even though each individual nation doesn't have a lot, but there are a lot of nations and they have a lot of forces. They have 12 field artillery brigades, and you say, whoa, they only have 12, but a lot of their armored, mechanized infantry and infantry actually have field artillery embedded in each one. So even though they only have 12 field artillery brigades, they have a higher number of artillery than a lot of other nations. They have 9 ADA, 7 combat air, 1 anti-tank brigade for a total of 29 combat support brigades. Now, where they make their money is they have the second largest and best enabler brigades. These type of brigades allow you to actually move your forces, not just inside your own nation or to your immediate border or outside your border, but you're able to force project your forces over large areas. They have 24 logistical support brigades, another 14 engineer brigades, 2 MP brigades, 3 military intelligence brigades, 1 EOD, 12 signals, 3 medical, 1 transportation, 3 CBRN/NBC, 4 electronic warfare. Let's look at their equipment and total numbers. Overall, they have a total force of over 1.5 million soldiers, of which 878,000 are active duty soldiers, and they have another 637,000 reserve and National Guard soldiers. Of that, they have 646 advanced tanks, Leo 2A7s, Challenger 2s, Leclercs, and the C1s, Italian C1s. They have a modern tank fleet of about 1,300 Leo 2s and Polish PT-91s. The capable force, they have almost 1,200 capable tanks, T-72s, they have a lot of T-72s, Leo 1s, M60A3s, and M84s, which are T-72 knockoffs. Now they do have some poor and hopeless tanks. They have about almost 800 of those. 533 are poor. M68-1s, M48A5s, and the TR85s. And some people say, oh, TR85s look great and they have new electronics, but it's still basically just a T55-54 with lipstick paint on it. 260 hopeless tanks, M48s, and T55s, like I said, for a total fleet of almost 4,000 total tanks. Now, like Russia, they make the backbone of their forces are their armored vehicles. They have over 10,000 infantry fighting vehicles. They have another almost 1,300 armored personal carriers for a total of 22,700 armored vehicles. They have, like I said, when you look at the fact they only have 12 field artillery brigades, you think they don't have that much artillery, but surprise, they got 5,500 indirect fire systems. They have almost 1,900 self-propelled artillery. They have almost 3,100 towed artillery. They have another 400 multiple launch rocket systems. Now, they have the second best attack and scout helicopters in the world with 555. And they also have the second largest air transportation fleet in the world with 1,500 heavy and medium transport helicopters. They have 2,400 ADA systems, mostly SAMs and some guns. On to the number one. Of course, the number one ground force in the world is the United States. They lead the world, and it's not as big as it is with the Air Force and the Navy, but they still have the best ability to force project their forces all over the world. Their forces train in every environment. They constantly are deploying. They constantly are training. They have some of the best equipment in the world. They have a huge amount of equipment. When you couple that with their National Guard, which is one of the best reserve trained forces in the world, and the Marine Corps, which is the largest Marine Corps in the world, it's a lot. They have a lot of capabilities. As you can see, we'll start off. They have 1,200 total ground forces, of which 661 are active duty. It's a full, all the way across the board, volunteer force. They have another 560 reserve and National Guard soldiers. They're broke down into 7 corps. These also count the Marine Expeditionary Forces. I count those as corps. They have 23 division headquarters. They have a total of 25 heavy brigades, 16 armored, 9 mech infantry. They have 25 infantry brigades. They have another 9 Marine brigades. They have a total of 8 air brigades, 5 of which are airborne, 3 of which are air assault, for a total of 67 maneuver brigades. Now, they have 26 field artillery brigades, 24 air combat brigades. They've got a lot of Apaches. They have the capabilities of supporting NMWAs, Marine Air Wings, which have the ability to wreak havoc in a conventional warfare. They have 8 ADA brigades. We'll look at their tank force itself. They got a total of 2,800, almost 2,900 total tanks, of which 1,600 are advanced M1A2 SEP V2s. They've already started to roll out the SEP V3s. The first 3 brigades will have those soon, before the end of the year. They have a total of 1,200 modern tanks, M1A1 SAV situational awareness tanks. The Marines are going to get rid of theirs, so that's going to lower their numbers by about 400, 500 some tanks. Now, they have 499 infantry fighting vehicles made up mostly of M2, M3 Bradleys, and the LAVs themselves. They have slightly over 1,100 armored personal carriers for a total armored force of 16,291. Now, they have almost 3,800 total indirect fire systems, 965 self-propelled, which of course are mostly the M109s. They've got 2,152, mostly the M777 towed artillery. They've got 640 multiple launch systems. They're switching over from the MLRS to the HIMARS ARs, which are basically the same system. They're just on wheels, so it's easy to transport them. They have the world's largest attack copter fleet, with mostly just Apache AH-64Es and Ds. They've got by far the world's largest transportation fleet, with 3,236. This counts the Marines MV-22s. They have about 1,200 ADAs. This counts. They're all SAMs. They're Avengers. They're Patriot systems. They have a pretty advanced force. Now, where they really lead the rest of the world and enable them to be the #1 force, it was their enablers. They've got 153 enabler brigades, 51 of which are logistics. Logistics wins wars. Tactics are good, equipment's good, but if you can't support forces all over the globe, then you're not really a global force. If all you can do is invade your neighbor, then are you really a global force? The U.S. has, like I said, has 51 logistical brigades, 16 engineer brigades, 3 EOD, 15 military intelligence, 11 MPs, military police, 4 CBRN, 11 signal, 1 transportation, 14 medical. They've got 21 maneuver enhancement brigades. They've got another 6 aviation brigades. By far, this is the most capable force in the world today. They have issues like any other military, but it's an impressive force. I'd like to thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Army Life Old Man Fat Boy style. The references I used for this was Jane's Military Capabilities Module, which you have to pay for and it's online. The International Institute for Strategic Studies and Military Balance 2018, 2019, and 2020. I also use the Stockholm International Peace Resource Institute database. Once again, thank you. Have a great day.